Welcome into the official Jets podcast.
I eat, breathe, and sleep the New York Jets, my team.
He knows what it means to wear the green and white.
That is a tightrope walk across Niagara Falls. That's hard to do.
The official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Shop game day ready jewelry styles and so much more at kendrascott.com.
Always great to see a big-time friend here of the New York Jets. It's Mike Tannenbaum, of course. Mike, you just taped something here in Indianapolis at the NFL Combine, a GM Roundtable. Can you talk about the genesis of that and when that production is actually going to air?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Eric. Yeah, so we did a GM Roundtable, John Schneider, Jason Light, and it was just the idea of the piece was to take the fans behind the curtain of what is it actually like to be a GM? What is it like to make decisions? What is it like to get between, the head coach and the owner and say, hey, we got, a challenge here, a bump in the road. What are we going to do? And two Super Bowl winning GMs. They were great stories. Touched on the Brett Farve trade.
Did you really?
Yeah. John Schneider was a big part of the Green Bay Packer front office when I was with the Jets and we traded for Farve. So we went a little bit deep on that. We made Jason Light the commissioner of the NFL. Had a great conversation. So NFL Live tomorrow and other ESPN digital platforms.
All right, cool. So, but for Jets fans,
yeah,
can we go back in history to the trade?
Let's go.
Okay, so take me through, because it's the summer, take me through those conversations inside the building, and then also ultimately what led to the deal.
Yeah, a lot of head coaches, Brian Daboll, Brian Schottenheimer, Eric Mangini, we kind of all felt like, hey, Chad Pennington was a really good quarterback. And we were trying to beat Tom Brady and the Patriots at the time and felt like, wow, nothing against Chad, but if we could go get Brett Favre, let's go try to get him. And Woody Johnson was totally on board, and we were battling hard. Initially, I think Brett Favre wanted to go to other places. I think it's well documented, right. Minnesota, Tampa Bay. He had played for John Gruden at Green Bay, who is now the head coach of Tampa Bay. We had to compete against that. So, and then there was always, once we made the trade, Eric, there was a big question like, will he actually come?
Yeah.
So at the time, Dave Zott was the player development guy. We went down and I said, look, Dave, like Brett's coming back because we had to cut Chad Pennington to stand at the cap. Whether he's coming voluntarily or involuntarily, I don't know that, but he's coming.
What were those 24 hours like for you? Because I remember jumping on conference calls late that night where you were addressing the media. It probably went into the wee hours of the morning. And then the following night, Jets had a preseason game in Cleveland against the Browns.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I didn't sleep. I went home and basically changed clothes and then went to the airport to go get him. So we did do a media call. Like it was very late at night. Good memory. And Eric Mangini actually had to cut Chad in Cleveland because they were there for the preseason game. I had stayed behind because I knew what was going on, and I just felt like we had a better chance to execute this trade if I was back at the office.
Yeah, I remember people saying, Mike T, he didn't get on the bus.
Yeah. And that's kind of how it all happened.
So what about that roster at that point? Because you make the trade for Farve, and that team started 8-3, including a thumping of the Tennessee Titans in Nashville.
Yeah, and Jeff Fisher jumped out of a plane before the game. They were undefeated, and that pissed everybody off. Like, he's jumping out of a plane. He's not taking it seriously. And the Lavernius Coles and the Damian Woodies of the world, they were pissed. They were really mad. We had a good team, and they were really disrespected that the opposing head coach would jump out of a plane before the game and not take it seriously.
Wow.
And we waxed them, and I was one of those games where people were like, afterwards in the locker, I still remember that. They were like, who is he to do that?
Yeah. Do you ever wonder what would have happened with the 2008 team had not Farve endured some physical injuries down the stretch?
It's interesting when you ask guys like Damian Woody or Lavernius Coles in particular, like they'll tell you that, the team in 2009 may have gone to the championship game, but the 2008 team was actually better. And sometimes that happens in football. That's what makes it, a great sport.
Yeah.
On paper, one team certainly had more accomplishments, but those guys would tell you like maybe that team in 08 was actually better.
Why was Rex the right guy for you in 09 as he made the switch from Mangini, but he comes in and you can talk about his approach from day one when he walked into the building?
Yeah, I think, Woody Johnson, myself, Scott Cohen, I think what we saw was a guy that was going to come in, it was a little bit of a 2-for-1, Eric. So Brian Schottenheimer was the offensive coordinator. We felt good about Brian and keep him and that offensive structure in place with a lot of really good coaches, and then have Rex kind of come in and, for lack of a better word, maybe like rejuvenate the defense, give it a little bit more of a newer look, a pressure look. And we felt like it was a 2-for-1. And, Rex came in, and Rex is Rex, unabashedly confident, a lot of energy. And it just worked, right? It was the right time with the right coach, with the right roster. We had a couple, really, really fun years.
Did the organization need that kind of voice at that time?
Yeah, I just think, give a lot of credit to Scott Cohen, Woody John. I think we just kind of felt like, this is the guy. It was pretty clear. Ironically, one of the other finalists for the job was Steve Spagnuolo.
Wow.
Who's obviously gone on to do terrific things. I mean, think about all the great coaches we were around, from Dayball and Shoddy and obviously Rex, Spags. There were some really talented coaches.
What stands out more when you look back, when people say, hey, Mike T, 09, 2010, each of them very different, unique in their own right as far as the runs are concerned?
Yeah, I think a couple things stand out. I thought Rex's ability to make every player feel like they mattered. Like the story I like to tell, like Ahmad Carroll, Batman, he was a first-round pick of the Green Bay Packers at corner. University of Arkansas, didn't work out. He came in, and I'll never forget this. Rex says to him, hey, what do you like to do? I like to blitz. And so his nickname was Batman. So we put in a Batman blitz.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how many times we used the Batman blitz in a game, but you talk about getting more out of a guy, who's totally vested in. That's just a little story, but to have that relatability with players is so important.
Magical in terms of winning 4 road playoff games over the course of 2 seasons. Do you ever, Pittsburgh, that championship game, do you think about that one more than Indianapolis?
Yeah, I do, and I got to get over it at some point. But I look, and he was a good player, so don't get. But we're off the field on the first drive of the game, and 50 yards away, they call Antonio Cromartie for hands to the face, and they wound up scoring on that drive. And I think to myself, if nothing else in the universe ever changes, but that one call, I actually think we win the game, because I think the whole game changes. They're off the field, we stop them. But look, it was, great. More than anything, this is a relationship business, and just proud of the relationships that I have with them, with a lot of those players and coaches and staff to this day.
All right, Jets fans want to get back to the postseason desperately. That. You mentioned, getting back in relationships. So let's start their transitions. Bill Parcells, how much of an influence has he had on your career?
A ton. He probably a lot more about life, than anything else. And tell a quick story. So I'm very fortunate to be on ESPN. And ironically, going back a couple of years ago, Aaron Rodgers is with the Packers, and it's clear he wants out. And we're on air, and the first hour, for whatever reason that day, I was a little bit more pro player, saying Greeny, if he doesn't want to be a Packer, they should just let him move on. And for whatever reason, I just kind of that day was definitely leaning towards more the player side of the situation.
Right.
And between the 8 and 9 hour, we had a little bit of a break. So I'm checking my phone, and it's a text from Coach Parcells. Don't ever tell anybody you work for me. It's embarrassing. What does a contract actually mean? So the producer gets in my ear and says, hey, the A block of the 9 o'clock hour is going to be the same as the A block of the 8 o'clock hour. Your answers were great. Just say, run it back.
Right.
So Greeny comes to me. He's like, so Mike, what should, the Green Bay Packers do with Aaron? And I'm like, Greeny, a contract's a contract. I mean, if he doesn't want to be there, they should fine him. They should suspend him. And I was like, I had a gut, a pit in my stomach. I still work for the guy. And it's been 20 plus years. And, he's just such a special guy. I see him pretty regularly now, and we talk about life and politics and religion and racial matters. And he has so much wisdom about our country. Sometimes football doesn't even come up.
Is he the best program builder in the history of this league?
Certainly he's up there. Look, I'm really fortunate. I got a chance to work for Coach Belichick too,
Yeah.
who's in that conversation with Bill Walsh. Like, those guys are amongst the best of all time, and to take 4 different teams to the playoffs is something that no one else has ever done.
All right, so he had such a huge influence on Aaron Glenn as well. Let's go back to AG's playing career. He started in '94 with the Jets, and of course, you were there. Weeb, Bank Hall, Hofstra. What was Aaron like as a player?
A lot of the same attributes you've seen now. Look, he's been on the job now for 10 minutes, so I get it. Like, it's not been that long, but the same attributes you're seeing, like someone that's very serious-minded, very focused, very driven, does not suffer fools well. A kind, compassionate person, but who's very, very competitive.
You're not going to tell us too much what happened behind those closed doors, but what was he like during the interview process this time around?
Yeah, Eric, it's what you see is what you get.
Yeah.
Like, it's really not a mystery. Like, he's, gotten the most out of players at, a few different stops. He's paid his dues. You go back to 2012 when he started with the Jets as a scout and just worked his way up and grinded. So he's a rare guy, and I know how hard he worked at scouting. I know how hard he's worked at coaching. He's paid his dues. Sometimes you see people not work out because they've gone from, a position coach to a head coach. Like, he's done it the right way, and he's had success at every stop.
Exhaustive searches that land the Jets, Aaron Glenn and Darren Mougey. What was it like working with the guys this time around? You know Woody Johnson for a long time. You've worked with him before. Obviously, you're a member, founder of the 33rd team, and you were working with Rick Spielman as well in support of this search.
Yeah, and Christopher Johnson and Jaime Elhai, the team president. Like, it was. I gotta tell you, like, it's gonna sound like weird to say this. Like, there was a little part of me. It was like I was almost sad when it was over because it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I learned so much. It was an unbelievable experience. I mean, we talked to so many people, and just to learn from so many disparate, approaches and backgrounds, and just, it was awesome. Like, I really enjoyed it. It was long, it was detailed, a lot of hours, but it was a great group of people that I think, if you would ask, Woody or Christopher or Jaime, Rick, like, I think we just kind of enjoyed being around one another. It was like I said, it was a really fun process.
How unique is AG's journey when you're talking about a guy who played here, first round pick in '94, coming out of Texas A&M, plays 15 seasons in the National Football League. You hire him as a scout in 2012. He works a couple years on the pro side and the college scouting side, and then works his way up as an assistant coach, starting off with the Cleveland Browns, of course, working with Sean Payton in New Orleans, and then finally working as a defensive coordinator under Dan Campbell in Detroit.
Yeah, like I said, he's earned it all. Like, there's no part of him that doesn't deserve this, opportunity. Again, and that's not to say, like, there won't be bumps in the road along the way, Eric, but like, he is been around a lot of disparate guys from Sean, Dan, Coach Parcells, like, and knowing Aaron, he'll take all of those and he'll be his own guy. Like, he's very comfortable in his own skin. He'll have the hard conversations. Like, all those things are, really important. And I think it's kind of cool. There's now 5 current NFL head coaches that played for the team that they're now coaching, from Coach Harbaugh in Los Angeles with the Chargers, Dan Campbell, as we mentioned, in Detroit, D'Amico Ryans in Houston, and Mike Vrabel in New England.
That's a great stat that you're throwing out there. That's your ESPN knowledge, your analysis coming up here. So let's talk about Darren Mougey. I don't think a lot of Jets fans knew about Mougey at the beginning of this process, but now he's been on the job here over a month. What stood out to you guys about Darren during this whole thing?
Yeah, he was, like, very thorough. He was thoughtful. He certainly had a plan. He had, I know people will say, like, he's young, but he's had a lot of experience in different roles. And when there's ownership changes or leadership changes and someone gets more responsibility, that's typically a pretty good indice of someone that's, very talented, very well thought of. And again, like, similar to AG, like, he's checked a lot of the boxes and he's earned this right.
As a first-time GM, which you have that experience, Well, what are going to be some of the eye-opening things for Darren in this role?
Yeah, well, I would stay tuned to NFL Live tomorrow on ESPN because we talk a lot about the first question actually in the roundtable is what do you know today that you wish you knew on the first day of the job? And we kind of had a laugh about, like, you manage generally. That's what a GM does. But, it just, look, I was lucky. I was the assistant GM for 5 years of the New York Jets before I became the GM. And when I got the position, I was lucky enough to get the position, I had no idea what I was getting into. And it could be, hey, this person wants a new title. This person feels like they're underpaid. This person is going through like a personal situation. This player's just changed agents, whatever it could be. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I thought we were like, watching film or, trying to like, and some of your most productive days, you're not even behind your desk.
How important is that relationship between GM and head coach? And what have you seen in the early stages from Aaron and Darren that you're encouraged by?
Yeah, I think there's like mutual respect and good communication. And, on this roundtable, I said, look, at the end of the day, like it's such a hard and complicated job. Like if I was shoulder to shoulder with the head coach and owner, I didn't care about the rest. I could handle the agent, I could handle the media, but it was those two people that were critical to have alignment with.
So we're coming full circle. We started off this conversation talking about your trade for Brett Favre as GM of the New York Jets. What does this leadership team have in front of them at the quarterback position right now? We know Tyrod Taylor in the building. You got a couple of young passers as well. Jordan Travis was on NFI last year. Adrian Martinez in-house. But we're a couple days now away from free agency, and then that will be followed by the draft.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. And I think that's like in a perfect world how things work. You reset with in this case, head coach GM, and obviously, hopefully the quarterback, follows, quickly behind. And, sometimes you can get it all done year one, sometimes you can't. But I could totally understand, why they made the decision they made.
But Mougey, did you like what you hear from him as far as a decision maker is concerned when he says at number 7, I'm open to moving up. I'm open to moving back because he's going to keep all options open.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's running the right playbook 100%. And look, we're sitting here. It's the end of February. Free agency is still several weeks away. The draft's a couple months away. So absolutely, you got to get all the information and then make the best decision possible.
What's the first steps for this team in terms of with the new regime once you get these guys on the field in terms of setting their tone, the way they want to run things?
Go back to the beginning with Coach Parcells. I remember, first meeting, like I'm in there. It's 1997, and he's just talking about, hey, we're gonna have less injuries this year. The 96 Jets had too many injuries, and they won one game. 97, we won 9. 98, we were in the championship game.
Yep.
And Coach Parcells, if he was sitting right here, would talk about it was the offseason program, being more conditioned. And whatever the record is, like, I would expect this team to be really well coached, and you look at conditioning, you look at penalties, you look at end of game situations, and I have tremendous confidence that Aaron will do a great job with all that. And I think all the indices to say like, wow, is this team being coached well, will be there.
What about Aaron's? And you were part of this as well, but you guys signed on Vinny Testaverde. I think he was 35 years old in '98, and people on the outside probably started that season saying, you guys don't have an answer at quarterback. Glenn Foley started that season, but then Vinny went on a magical run. So I think there is a rush for people and fans to say you have to have the answer at quarterback right now, where ultimately this is going to develop.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And things will happen. Like we've already seen things like, is Matt Stafford available? Like there's just a lot of uncertainty, and we'll see what the draft brings too. Last year there were 6 quarterbacks in the top 12. I doubt we'll see that this year, but maybe there's more quarterbacks that go earlier than people expect.
So early thoughts on this 2025 draft class overall. You with boots on the ground in Mobile, you're here in Indianapolis. Just as far as maybe position groups that are more talented than the rest.
Yeah, I would start at the running back position. It's historically great. I think we're. Obviously, you can start with Ashton Genty, but, from there, Hampton from North Carolina. I'm a big Cam Scaboo fan out of Arizona State. there's probably like 10 to 12 guys I think will play meaningful snaps. I think D-line is also very similar, led by obviously Abdul Carter out of Penn State, but I see another 10 to 12 defensive linemen going early, probably in the first, 50, 60 picks.
Abdul Carter made his case today in Indianapolis to be the number 1 overall selection. Your thoughts if you're a team there, because the Jets aren't there right now at 7, unless they move up to 1, and let's see what happens. It's probably, I would imagine, there's a small percentage of that happening. But if you're Tennessee and people say, hey, maybe they would look to upgrade the quarterback position, you're staring at Cam Ward, but then you're also staring at a guy like Abdul Carter, who could be a potential game wrecker on the defensive side of the ball. Can you weigh that?
Yeah, I mean, you have to factor all those things, and if you're Tennessee, you want to have your roster set to the extent you can, so you can have flexibility. And obviously, their decision in part is going to weigh in what's Brian Callahan and Mike Borgonzi's evaluation on Will Levis, and that will factor in quite a bit.
Yeah, a final thought. I just wanted to get your analysis on the quarterback class here this year, because we mentioned Cam Ward, but Shadur Sanders, Jackson Dart, and we could continue to name the names. We're not going to see 6 quarterbacks taken in the first 12 overall selections, but do you like maybe potentially some developmental prospects down the line?
I do like Shug from Louisville, like very interesting guy. Started off, he was, of all things, Justin Herbert's backup at Oregon, goes to Texas Tech, dealt with some injuries along the way. I thought he was very good in Mobile, talking about the Senior Bowl. Anxious to see what he does here. He's just one of, a few others. Riley Leonard, who was a basketball player until his junior year in high school, quarterback that started off at Duke, did really well, transferred to Notre Dame. Did some things in Mobile that were encouraging and things that he's still going to have to work on. But, a big, long, good-looking athlete. Jalen Milroe, another guy that flashed in Mobile. So there's some guys that will be, developmental that, will be interesting to follow.
Enjoyed it as always. I know you're going to keep a keen eye on North Carolina next year. How can you talk about the football program and their latest edition?
Our son Jacob's going to be a long snapper for them, and it's a position that he's earned and did a remarkable job. And didn't think that my son would be playing for Coach Belichick in college. It's kinda...
yeah, who would have thought that?
Yeah.
I mean, back in the day when you guys were walking the halls at Weeview Bank, and now your son is playing for Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is crazy.
hey, man, great seeing you.
All right, thanks so much.
The Official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Shop game day ready jewelry styles and so much more at kendrascott.com.
What's this week like for you with free agency on the horizon? Everybody here, including agents, all 32 teams represented, and then you got hundreds of prospects here, and the draft's right around the corner.
Yeah, it's we're juggling multiple things, and we're starting to gather information for the draft. It's like, it starts actually at the Senior Bowl when we're down there and just kind of like one eye on the prospects, because that's 3 steps down the road, and we've got free agency in the meantime. We've got trades that could potentially happen, guys that are going to be released. It's you leave here and you go, I can't believe I didn't get a chance to talk to X. Your list. You go in. I've gone in and I've made lists and say I've got to. These are the people I have to see, and I never complete the list because it's too many people here trying to conduct their business, get their stuff done. But that's a good thing, right? It means it's a game that everybody's interested in, and the off season is as entertaining as the regular season sometimes. In a different way, obviously, but it keeps everybody engaged 365.
Jets, again, are busy this offseason, have a new leadership team.
Yep.
Aaron Glenn, Darren Mougey.
Mm-hmm.
What are people around the league saying about those hires?
A lot of respect for Darren Mougey and what he's done and what he was able to do in Denver in numerous roles, right? And also being part of regime changes there. So seeing how things multiple times, seeing how the table was reset, what worked, what didn't work. And I know that he came in and really did a good job of communicating what his plan was going to be. More so than a lot of other guys that they interviewed, and a clear vision for what he wanted to do. that's the best. I mean, it's never. You've got a clear vision, and it may not work, but you want somebody who comes in, has a plan, and is able to execute, and you go, okay, that guy had a plan. So I know that there's a lot of respect for what he was able to do. As for Aaron Glenn, the way that they really established a culture in Detroit has really impressed people, and the way that he has progressed from a former player into his coaching career, a smooth transition, a guy who was a really good coordinator and a great motivator too. I mean, that's, to me, we focus way too much on here's a guy as a coordinator that's going to make him a good head. That's not it. It's not necessarily that. Certainly from an external, it's who can run the operation, and they did a great job of it in Detroit, and feel like he learned a lot and is able to set it up for the Jets for what he wants to do.
How much is his voice, AG's, going to resonate throughout the building and inside the locker room?
It's going to be huge. There's no doubt about it. And you saw his interactions with the media. Listen, from the beginning of this search, before the search actually, who can handle the New York market was going to be a big part of this whole thing. And his name was the name that came to the forefront first and foremost, because they knew a guy that already had experience in this market and is so strong-willed, and you see in his interactions with the media the way that he's able to handle those things. That's how it's going to be internally. And he already had the Quinnen Williams thing with the tweet that was taken down, and showing already that he can handle that and make it clear, like, we're going to be stronger from the inside now as an organization, and work together here and make sure that the strength is inside that locker room and inside the building. He's already establishing that, I believe.
The quarterback position, the Jets announced that they're going to part ways from Aaron Rodgers. He's still on the roster. We'll have to find out what that ultimately looks like if it is a June 1 designation. You got Tyrod Taylor in the house. You got a couple of young passers. Do you anticipate the Jets addressing the quarterback position in free agency and the draft?
In both, yeah. Well, I think, yeah.
Or
problem
is it
is,
and or?
But the problem, it could, yeah. The problem is there's a lot of teams that are trying to do that, and I've heard that from multiple GMs talking about how different avenues can get you to the answer. They've cited, back when the Seahawks, I've heard multiple GMs cite this offseason. For some reason, everybody remembers 2010 now, where the Seahawks traded for Charlie Whitehurst, and the next year they signed Matt Flynn, and then they drafted Russell Wilson. And in the end, they said, we're just going to go with the guy that we think, and Russell was the best option for them, so they went with him, and it turned out to be the right decision, obviously. So if everybody's doing that, there aren't enough guys to fill. You know what I mean? So somebody's going to say, well, we really want to go after free agents. And that there's that cluster of free agents, whether it's, I include Matthew Stafford from a trade standpoint, whether it's Stafford, Darnold, Derek Carr might be free, Aaron Rodgers, all these guys. And they might have that idea of, we're going to get one of those guys. Well, if 8 teams are going for 5 guys, then the other 3, then it's going to have to be, whether it's Wilson or whether it's Jacoby Brissett or one of those guys. I think then you're into a realm of player that Tyrod Taylor fits. You've already got that. You know what I mean? So if you go after that first tier,
that's right, and
everybody else, so you stick with Tyrod Taylor, which I think is a good option. Would be, we counted this the other day, I think it's the 4th time he would be a bridge quarterback potentially, and I don't mean that to demean him. I think it's actually a compliment to him, the fact that he's been trusted with that role before, to get yourself to a young quarterback, whether it's not even this year. It could be, you draft a quarterback in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round. It doesn't pan out, that's okay. That's much better than taking a swing in the top 10 and it doesn't work out. Because then you can come back next year and say, well, we took a shot later on, but now we're really going to take a bigger swing.
A good transition, good segue. Jets at 7.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate them not being in the quarterback business early in the draft?
Do I anticipate them not being in the draft? Yeah, I do. Because I don't think that this is the draft where you're going to force that.
Yep.
And there's not a lot of guys. Like Cam Ward seems to be the guy that is the consensus number 1, and most people think, well, that's a guy, right? Whereas Shedeur Sanders is eye of the beholder. You're seeing evaluations for him all over the board. Jackson Dart's going to be in the conversation. Quinn Ewers might get himself in there as well, but those guys are not being looked at as, top 10, take them now type guys. So my anticipation is that they stay put, and now they're looking at some value elsewhere, whether it's the tight end from Penn State or some of these guys.
Tyler Warren.
What's that?
Tyler Warren.
Tyler Warren, yeah. Who really is being talked about as a complete prospect in a way that, and I don't know that he makes it to 7, by the way. I'm done. Yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But there's talent to be had certainly in the top 10 for sure.
Interesting offseason ahead for these guys, Glenn and Mougey, starting with free agency because the Jets several needs. You go back in the defensive backfield and say safety. You can say opposite Sauce Gardner, who's going to be playing cornerback because DJ Reed has got an expiring contract. Brandon Eccles, his backup, has an expiring contract. Jamie Sherwood, a team MVP last year at the linebacker position. He's an unrestricted free agent. You have a couple defensive tackles that are unrestricted who played next to Quinnen Williams. And then on the offensive side of the ball, we talked about quarterback, tight end, Tyler Conklin.
Morgan Moses is free.
Yes, and Morgan Moses as well. So
who's going to have interest, by the way, I gather.
So how do you assess that when we just start discussing top of the line, their free agents and their needs? How do you assess their priorities?
You tell me who they're retaining, right? Because it's not even their guys that they drafted; it's a completely different regime.
Right.
So a lot of times you can fall in love with a Sherwood and say, okay, this guy's been with us the last couple of years, and he's really become an integral piece and deserves that to be thrown into the mix there as a starter. And I think he's going to have a lot of interest as well. And you're seeing what Zach Bond meant to the Eagles, by the way. So all of a sudden, the off-the-ball linebacker, kind of like the running back, becoming in vogue again a little bit with some teams. So, I think the cornerback position certainly is important for a coach who was a cornerback as a player, is a defensive-minded guy. So I'd say that's a priority. And even if they bring back, DJ Reed, add another one. You need 3, you need 4, and Detroit certainly did a good job of that with their personnel to make sure that they were stacked at that position, had a stable of guys as well. So I think cornerback is certainly a priority for them. Defensive tackle is going to be tough because these guys are going to get paid. There's going to be the haves and the have-nots, though, at defensive tackle position. You're going to see guys like Milton Williams make a ton of money. Oso Odighizuwa are going to make a ton of money. I don't think you have to go certainly there if you've got Quinnen Williams.
Since it's so deep in the draft, right?
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right. So I think you're going to have the guys take the big swings, and then there's going to be a huge drop-off. There'll be guys. Sheldon Rankins, the former Jet, is already available. Excuse me. So I think he'll make some money. You'll have some guys in that realm, but. I don't think you have to go that route if you certainly got a dominant guy like Quinn, and I don't think you have to make that necessarily a priority to go big in free agency.
Yeah, that's something that I think is flying under the radar.
And Conklin, by the way, you mentioned Conklin. Apparently, he's got some interest around the league as well, too.
Interesting, because the other thing that these guys have to do is assess the roster, because maybe the old regime thought differently as some of these guys, and then you have new coordinators across the board. Anything catch your eye there as far as Glenn's hires, respectively, when you're speaking about Tanner Engstrand, who came over from Detroit, passing game coordinator. Steve Wilkes, experienced guy who's done everything in the National Football League. And then Chris Banjo, who played under Glenn in New Orleans and was most recently assistant special teams coordinator with the Broncos.
And you saw how much interest there was in Banjo. Because he had multiple interviews this offseason, so he's considered a blossoming stud in the coaching industry as well. I love Steve Wilkes. I thought he got a extremely raw deal in San Francisco 2 years ago, and somebody had to take the blame for that Super Bowl loss, and it wound up being him. And things weren't much better once he left there. So Steve, I also think Steve is. And I've said this before, he's a good coordinator. I think he's got the chops to be a great head coach. And I don't think he got a fair shake in Arizona or Carolina, where he led them to a 6-6 record, I believe, for a team that was struggling as an interim head coach, and then didn't get real serious consideration for the job there because they wanted an offensive guy, and they wound up hiring Frank Reich, who was gone quickly, and then Steve Wilkes is a great hire, and he'll be able to give Aaron Glenn the experience of, hey, I've been in that chair twice. Once as an interim, once as a full-time guy, to help him get moving as a head coach.
All right, we're going to get you out of here, but state your case. You can pick any card here as far as, since we've been talking a little bit about pro free agency. Pick a card, and then...
Pick a card anyway. Stop.
Yeah. Okay. You're going right off the top? Hold on.
This is actually a good one. So this is a good one. This is a guy who's
going right off the top.
When you get a GM or a head coach who comes in, and you can get a guy who has been with him before, and Carlton Davis, I probably should say the name. Get a guy who's been with him before that helps set the tone for the other guys there to say, I can translate what he wants, what he's expecting, to those guys that have already been there. That is extremely helpful. And plus, he's a good player as well. I don't mean to make it just seem like he's an honorary coach, but I like that one. It's a good fit for the Jets right there. There you go. The 3-card Monty. 13-card Monty.
You're a good fit for the Jets as well, because I'm hearing that, hey, when you're on Jets platforms, people are consuming it.
People, my Jet fan friends, and there are plenty of them, they're watching this now.
So
one Jets drive or whatever, it's always like, dude, saw you on that. Great, awesome. Or, you're an idiot. I get that too. But they see it.
Well, we all do. Maybe we can circle back and see what the Jets actually did in free agency at the league meetings here in a couple of weeks.
I will be there. Yeah, beautiful weather in Palm Beach this time of year. So excited for that.
Thanks, buddy.
You got it, pal.